the focus of going forward uh, is really hinged upon our knowledge of the various moving pieces that are involved with us having church in this day and time. Mostly the way that we have church. I guess I better also say that most of those who are, well, really all of those that are attending and participating in this session, we are all of a Pentecostal effect. So we know um, the ins and outs that are usually presenting themselves in one of our gatherings. So I'm just wanting to dive in. I thank all of these experts that are present with us. I'm grateful for my father, my covering, Bishop William Harper. I am grateful for Bishop Bruce Parham. I am grateful for Chairman Herbert Thompson, Pastor Lawrence Baker. I am grateful for Associate Pastor Bethany Johnson, as well as Dr. Levi King. Well, actually, his father's name is Doctor, so I can't call him Doctor, but Levi King, we call him Two King. He's got a slice of expertise here that I really believe is going to enhance what we discussed today. And I also am grateful for Dr. Kanika Turner, who is doubling in, offering support to Miss Bethany Johnson. So let's just dive right in. And I want to start this with the first question would be for uh, Bethany, as well as Dr. Kanika. I just want to ask the question this way. Where are we? Where are we medically in congruence with the new strand that's been identified and the completion of the manufacturing of the vaccines, all that have been distributed? I know a question that I hear often is this new strand, is it going to supersede? Should we think it could supersede what's been created with the vaccine? And obviously, the people that usually ask those questions don't have that answer. So let me just start right there. Where are we medically with the virus? And Sister Bethany Johnson Javois, I'll let you start that off.
Let's let the Indigo first, and then I'll fill in. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Stern.
All right. Thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Bethany, for inviting me. So where we are currently, of course, we know the vaccine has been rolled out. There's going to be different phases before it actually reach to the community level. So right now, of course, healthcare workers, long-term care facilities, and frontline workers. So we're still probably not, maybe to March or April until we can actually roll out to the actual community. And Bethany can probably speak on the logistics with the rollout in Missouri. But I would say in general, of course, things may change as of today. What I've read about the new strain right now, there's not too much of a concern that this new strain will supersede the current vaccine, but we don't know. We're learning so much. This may be different 30 days later, but as of right now in this moment, that's the information I have. Unfortunately, cases are continuing to surge all across the United States, as well as in the Midwest region. So definitely, I'm a big proponent of encouraging people to still wear your mask, practice the physical distancing, especially as we can start to develop messages to help people make a well-informed decision to get their vaccine. Now in my role, I think I'm concerned with, we have a vaccine, but a lot of our community members, our Black, Hispanic, Latinx community may be hesitant with getting the vaccine. So that's my next point, motivation point of speaking to the community is advocating and providing the education, being that trusted messenger to encourage people to make a well-informed decision to get the vaccine. So we still have a ways to go, but I am thankful the vaccine was developed, but we still have a ways to go before we can even get this under control. Bethany?
Add to that, just for those of you that like a couple of details, is that there are two individuals or groups that are making that vaccine. You'll hear Pfizer in the news, you'll hear Moderna in the news. Either way it goes, both are over 90% effective for those that have been tested. And so it doesn't matter what the product is called. At the end of the day, there's vaccine out there. The quantity is not great. So it's going to be time for rollout. And as Dr. Turner said, in terms of community members, we're looking beyond April, especially in the state of Missouri and the planning process for the state. To be honest with you, our state is a little bit behind in terms of that. So we're going to be looking at the rest of this year in terms of rollout, in terms of having to mask, in terms of reinforcing all the things that we've been saying. Just look at 2021 as a continual process of that.
Very good. Well, let me, just from that, I believe, Dr. Turner, you were saying something that brought my mind to some of the CDC's suggestions. Now, I know that as far as the social distancing is concerned, 6 feet. But I heard a report earlier in the summer that actually suggested that the aerosols or spit projectile, that range could actually be 13 feet. Is there any truth to, as we are trying to socially distance ourselves, is that a not necessarily a compromised number, I'll say, but is that distance of 6 feet, is that just being gracious, or should we be more diligent in our social distancing?
Yeah, I think we should definitely be more diligent. I mean, of course, wearing the mask, and if you're at minimal 6 feet, but I agree with you. So that 6 feet idea came from respiratory hygiene, meaning that, the concern is that we wear the mask because of asymptomatic transmission. So you yourself don't know that you're infected, but if you wear a mask, you can prevent infection to others. And if both parties are wearing a mask, it significantly decreases transmission risk. So, yes, aerosols, whether it's respiratory, they can travel up to 30 feet, actually, with enclosed, poorly ventilated areas. So one thing I get concerned about, where some churches are, choirs are singing and people are 6 feet apart, but they're in an enclosed space, poorly ventilated. If someone is asymptomatic and they have COVID-19, that's going to circulate in the entire building. So that makes me concerned. I don't see plexiglass in between. So me personally, I think it's safe with 6 feet, but if you talk about a church community, definitely advocating for at least 6 feet and wearing your face mask.
Very good. I just had an alarm go off here at the planting of the Lord. So if I have to turn into sheriff, y'all understand that. I think this would be a good time to ask you, Pastor Thompson, to chime in. And I'm asking you to chime in on the aspect of what are the minimal protocols that you as a pastor believe are necessary in order for your church doors to open? And I mean minimal protocols. The reason why I'm asking Pastor Thompson to start this discussion off, he was one of the first that I was aware of who were requiring all that would come into his particular edifice to sign a waiver. And I would, if you would, Pastor, just to kind of go into what your mindset was with the waiver, but also going beyond that, what are other minimal protocols that you believe, safety protocols, that should stay in place as we're opening up our doors?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Pastor Katron, and certainly thank you for this opportunity to share. We honor these great leaders, Bishop Parham. We thank God for him. We thank God for Bishop Harper. And I just want, if you all will just, speaking about protocol, just will allow me not to call every name that I see on the screen, just to honor everyone that's out there. As I was listening to the presentation from Dr. Turner and also listening to Dr. Bethany, I thought, boy, the minimum protocols that we have put in place are really minimal. Amen. And she talks about it could extend to 13 feet. But what we have done basically is we require every person that enters the building, the sanctuary, to wear a mask. Mask are mandatory. Secondly, we ask those basic questions. You know, have you traveled outside of the state? Or have you experienced any COVID-related symptoms? Anyone in your family? We also take temperatures and record the temperature of every person that comes in. In our corridor, as soon as you walk in, there is a hand sanitizing station. There's also a hand sanitizing station before you go into the sanctuary. And then we also keep all the doors open as you know, as much as possible. It's kind of difficult with the weather changing to keep the front door open at all times, but the door to the sanctuary is open, and that kind of helps reduce any touching of hard surfaces. So we do that. And then we have signs placed in a corridor and inside the sanctuary that encourage people to practice social distancing. And what we've done, since we have chairs, we actually spread the chairs out 6 feet apart. So people kind of have to sit in a way that they're automatically socially distanced. Also, we have the aisles. The aisles are spread. There's enough distance in each aisle that people are 6 feet apart. Those are just the basic things that we do. Now, there is a list or a litany of other things that we do, but that's the basic thing: the mask, temperature, the questions, and sanitizing.
I will, thank you, Pastor. I'll take this time. Let me slide Pastor Baker in on this one. I know Dr. Turner suggested it. I know Pastor Thompson has alluded to it, but let me just call it out as a direct question. Are masks, hand sanitizers, gloves, disinfectants of all sorts, are those items a part of our future? And if so, are we talking a few years here? Talk me off the ledge, because I tend to think of video footage that I happen to have remember seeing out of China. And if I'm not mistaken, and I was trying to remember, I believe it's like the last 4 or 5 years or so, every time that they could be discussing anything in China, everyone had on a mask. So again, before the COVID-19 emergency or pandemic began. So is it safe to believe, again, I'm hitting you with this one, Pastor Baker, is it safe to believe that that's what we need to bring our people, or those that fellowship with us, into a belief and an understanding that all of the safety protocols, they are norms for not just the immediate future, but for a while?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's going to be best for us to err on the side of caution, right? As we approach this, and have an expectation that this could last as long as it needs to last. I think that's the important thing, that we approach it with the right expectation. I think if we are to keep, as leaders, to keep our people safe, then we have to create certain protocols and be willing to allow those protocols to remain in effect until such time as we are as assured as possible that our people are safe when we gather. It's like when we send our kids to school, right? We send them to school with the expectation that the school and the teacher are going to do what's best for our children. And I think people come to church with that same expectation.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can add, I think you're kind of hitting at like herd immunity. Like when will we reach that point? And I think it's safe to say, I mean, right now, in my opinion, I would say at least for the entire year of 2021, we'll be wearing masks, because once the vaccine actually roll out to the community, the next thing, the idea of herd immunity. So either it will be, through vaccination or infection and recovery. We need to reach at least about 70 to 75%. So either people getting infected, which I don't want that to happen, or we encourage people to get the vaccine. So before we can safely remove masks, we do need to reach that level of herd immunity. And that can take the entire year of 2021. And then hoping that the vaccine production don't slow down, or no, issues come up with that, because people do have to get 2 doses, at least 21 days for Pfizer, or Moderna is 28 days. So definitely for at least all of 2021, we need to still be talking about these mitigation measures.
Go ahead, sis.
Dr. Patron, there are a few more mitigation measures I'll just sprinkle in as other leaders are continuing to talk as well. We know that in terms of the church, not only are those that need us watching from an evangelistic standpoint, but those other eyeballs from a security standpoint are watching. And so some of the other measures that I know we're doing that I just want to elevate as well is looking at our surveillance and our monitoring and our ability to have the appropriate security in place, because people are looking to, they see a different rhythm of the cars and the lots, and they're paying attention. We're purchasing equipment to think about how we actually sanitize in between services and budgeting for that to make sure that we have that appropriate equipment. Don't forget, masking and the way with which bodily fluid is released through the mouth is one way, but also when you think about your bathrooms and you think about the toilets that flush in the bathrooms, one of the reasons why we're restricting travel is because the flush of the toilet is just so significant that, again, COVID spreads in that way. So think about your bathroom and think about the ways with which the flush and the strength of that flush is happening. And then it was said, I know that Pastor Thompson is doing this, but make sure that you're limiting your church capacity, and not necessarily to what public health department is saying. You know your building, and you know how it really does seat comfortably. So do it according to what you know works for your edifice. Don't max it out. Look at what happens comfortably so that you can, when the time comes, spread that. So I just wanted to think about that. And one last thing, think about your visitor policy. So for example, maybe in those first phases, you're trying to make sure that everybody in the village is safe. Then you might want to have a different way with which you encourage visitors to come via Zoom only, or in what way will they come, and how will that be accounted for? So just other things to keep in mind.
Thank you, Bethany. One other thing you mentioned too, don't forget about your ventilation systems, checking your HVAC systems and your filtration systems. When's the last time that was changed out, updated? Because that will also be key to reopening your ventilation systems as well.
I'm glad you said that, Dr. Turner. As a sidebar here, and Levi too, King, I'm coming to you next. As a sidebar, I confess that I was the guy that always went into Home Depot, and when it came time for air duct vents, I went to the cheap end. I sure did. But now, I guess in the past 10 months, it would have been the first time in the history of me being a homeowner that I spent $20 on an air vent. So I underscore what you're saying there, Sister Turner. I'm sorry, Dr. Turner. I appreciate that. I did not want to go too far without addressing something that I see Sister Bethany had inserted in our chat. When it comes to the singing in the choirs, you know, that's the staple of who we are. There's no way around that. So it is with that. Well, hold on. Before I come to you, Brother Levi, let me ask either or both Bishop Harper and Parham to chime in on this part. And what I want to ask is it possible? Let's think critically here. How can we, let me word it that way, how can we make the virtual worship experience match the in-person worship experience? I'm asking that question critically, okay? How can we make the virtual worship experience match the in-person experience? Whichever one you want to do. Go ahead.
Bishop Harper, I digress.
It's going to be extremely hard to make the virtual experience like the in-person, you know, because virtually you just don't have that type of fellowship as you would have in person. The virtual, you know, is good, amen, for the service that and time that we're in right now, but that's really no match to our fellowshipping together. We were meant to fellowship together, you know. And so we can come up with that and do everything that we normally do, you know, as though we were in church. But there's something about our fellowshipping together that the virtual service just it will not match. You know, we look to hear people say amen, and you know, yes, Lord, you know, praise God.
Amen.
That's just a part of us. But with the virtual, you know, and then the other thing we look to share, looking at people face. You know, I like looking at people face to face. You know, and so there's no way I don't think that the virtual will actually take the place of in-person fellowship. It's good for the time being, but you know, it just can't replace, you know, our being together.
Of course, Bishop really covered it. Just to add to that, I think we got to understand that people are going through techno stress. So you have people who are working online all day. You have children who are on school or at school online. And then now we're doing church online. And so many times by the time they get to us, they're out of it, you know, truthfully. So I don't think the experience can be the same. It is a good substitute for where we are right now. And probably we should keep our services, you know, condensed so that we can keep their attention. But the truth of the matter is, like Bishop said, you know, every preacher wants to hear somebody say, yes, Lord. Or, you know, every now and then I just like to hear sanctified holler, you know. But that this is where we are. And so thank God for the technology so that we can do what we do. But it's not the same as community. It's not. But again, we can make it work the best way that we can. Yeah.
Let me.
I just wanted to add that it's been almost a year since we've been able to shake them and rock them and shake them. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah.
Duly noted. How about that? Let me pivot now to Levi King. Levi King is actually he's president, and he is the chair of Me Too Music. Me Too Music here in I would say, throughout the Midwestern, definitely throughout the Midwestern portion of the United States, has made a real good footprint as far as not just musical excellence, but how you blend that musical production and product into technology. If I call him Brother Two, because that's the nickname that he rolled with instead of Junior. But I want to pivot to you now, Levi. With that, now you just heard the bishops, their response, and I know that's nothing surprising. But one of the reasons why I asked of you to come on is because, if I'm not mistaken, your church, you guys you'd been streaming for, was it like 8 or 9 years?
Yep, almost 10 years. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a twofold question for you then. What precipitated that? And then secondly, let me present that question again to you in asking, is it possible, and I'm trying to ask that critically, is it possible for the virtual experience to be effective in close proximity anyway than the in-person? And if so, what are some of the methods that should be employed to make that happen?
Effective in what way? That's a pretty broad question. Effective in what way?
Okay. I asked effective to the point where, well, yeah, you're right. I probably did bake in the fact that there are certain people, when they attend in-person church, there's a garb that comes along with it. You dress the part, versus now with it being accessible, they're in your home, on your tablet, on your device. I'm starting to notice that it's a difference when the sisters put on their pumps versus house shoes coming to church, and it's a difference when you're robing up in your best suit versus you still got on your pajamas when the preacher gets up. I think there's an effect that comes along with that. But if that's what we're going to have, is there anything that comes to your mind that could help enhance the presentation of the virtual worship service that would grab the attention or keep that receiver more involved?
That's a really, really good question. I think one thing that most people don't realize is, our pastors, our bishops, a lot of them fought it so long. They fought streaming and they fought all of that so long. And some of them, I get it. I understand. Some of them, my father probably wouldn't stream. He's my pastor. He probably wouldn't have streamed if it wasn't for me and our media department, our media team. But so many people have fought it to be effective for real. Man, a lot of it falls on our leaders and what they're willing to do, what they're willing to allow, because they're, a lot of them are fighting it, to be honest with you. Some of them are doing it because they feel pressured to do it now, because that's really their only point of contact, to their members. But yeah, that question, I could go on for forever without really ever scratching the surface.
Well, let me represent the question this way. Is there a minimal package when we're talking about a church streaming their services? Has there been a minimal package involved? Package meaning what that church should have in place in order, again, when I say minimal, I'm talking access points. I'm not necessarily talking dollar signs. That church's ministry should at least be covering this and or that or the third to really consider yourself in the virtual church service game. Is there a package of something that comes to your mind?
So is there a package from an equipment standpoint or from what?
Well, I'm saying even from the application. What should I, for instance, okay, I'll go this way. Should he at least be trying to do Facebook and Instagram and YouTube Live? Gotcha. Should he at least be doing that, trying to do it live, or should he or she be focusing on recording their service and then employing somebody to come behind that to gloss and clean it up and then present it out? What's the minimal or the easiest maybe that he or she should do?
First of all, there are a few things we have to address and attack. Facebook, for instance, to make it quick. I hear a lot of because this is what we do. This is part of our business, to install and set churches up for streaming and things like that. And a lot of pastors see the numbers on Facebook and they believe that's where their audience is. But because it's all so new, they haven't really learned the game. And the game is Facebook has a news feed. So anybody can go down that news feed and pass that video. If they park there long enough while scrolling, it counts as a hit. So a lot of pastors are really trying to go after what they think their Facebook, they think that's their audience, because that's where they're getting the most views, when in fact the numbers, people are probably watching you for 5 to 10 seconds to get that number. YouTube for us churches is really a great way to go, especially now because of October 1st, when Facebook's new copyright policies hit October 1st, 2020. So it's affected and impacted a lot of churches. And these are the type of things I think we need to know before even really getting to the answer or in answering the question. So with the copyright policies, I know a lot of churches stream other artists' music, music we don't own the rights to. I've watched churches in their introductions, their countdown stream, your William Murphys, your Kirk Franklins, your Israel Holdens, all of them. But now Facebook, because of their stance and because of all of the lawsuits, are now holding us accountable and now shutting down. I've seen many churches, their Facebook pages being closed and shut down and deleted because of this. So going after Facebook, You know, YouTube really works for us because YouTube technically is in the music business. YouTube has been cutting copyright and publishing checks rather for the last 7 years, 7 to 8 years. So they handle this copyright infringement, you know, or these copyright claims. So for us churches, because we sing also, we're singing songs, our choirs, our praise team, and we're actually getting copyright claims for that too. So all of that plays a part in our streaming and what platform should we be going after? What's the minimal? YouTube is great for churches because then we can turn around and embed our YouTube videos on our websites. And, you know, people don't have to have a YouTube account to watch. So YouTube has a reach that goes farther, I guess, or goes further. It's a wider reach. It's a bigger net for our audiences.
I've heard somebody actually say YouTube is actually more controllable for me as the presenter.
In what way?
Well, controllable to the point where the way I remember it working is that I have the responsibility to upload a video in my account, but I can control when I upload it. So in other words, if I want to go and gloss it up with various graphics, and if I want to have it equalized out in the best way, it gives me the ability to put a better finished product out. That's what I.
Well, YouTube is not as compressed, so we get a higher bit rate. So that means your video quality and both your audio quality are a lot more clear. If there are any if you know of any churches that stream simultaneously to Facebook and YouTube, then go and check them out. Pull up your computer and pull them up at the same time and go back and forth and look. You'll see a difference in the quality between Facebook and between YouTube. You'll actually hear a difference. If you put on headphones, you'll even hear the difference. YouTube is the better option for us churches, for our churches, for many different reasons. The copyright claim right now is one of the biggest reasons. That is one of the best reasons to choose YouTube over anybody else. Facebook and Twitter are the same company, right? Or is it Instagram? Facebook and Twitter are the same company. But then Instagram, you get so much time on there. A lot of churches, I noticed a lot of pastors like yourself in the beginning who were only using Zoom. And you're limited there. You're limited if you only use Zoom. You're limited if you only use Facebook, because most of our older members, and not just older members, a lot of our members, period, don't have Facebook accounts, and they need Facebook to watch your Facebook live streams. With YouTube, every phone in America that you buy comes stocked. It comes stocked with YouTube as an app on your phone. And you don't need, if you're watching online, you don't need a YouTube account to watch. So YouTube is one of the better options for our churches
to go after. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I want,
because then we can share videos and everything.
I want to take that and pivot that, and we're almost finished. I appreciate you all taking the time out to share your thoughts and your expertise on this. Well, there was one thing that I wanted to have a bit of a discussion. Now, that which we were just, spent this first half hour on, those were the tangibles, okay? But going into the intangibles, let me just ask a general question to either of you all. And the general question is, what are the benefits of virtual worship services? Now, I know that might sound a little remedial, but I want us to put it out in the public sphere. What are the benefits to virtual worship service that come to your mind? What are the benefits? Anybody?
The audience. The audience is broader. You got a much broader audience doing it, a virtual experience, and you're probably reaching people that you might not have in your setting, depending on the size of that building. So at this point, all of us have global ministries. We're reaching people that we probably would never have touched before. That's one thing.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's true. That's what we've experienced in our Sunday worship. Every Sunday, we've got people that attend the service all over the country, where certainly we would not have had that without the virtual service.
Right.
I
Well,
was about to think another benefit too. Thinking about either professionals that attend the church. For example, I've been on call on weekends, but it was so easy for me to pull up my internet while I'm in the call room to listen to a service. So for me, it kept me connected on a spiritual level. Whereas before the pandemic, I had to always make it in person, rush and get there. Or if something happened, if I miss a service, I can now go back and look at it so I can know what was the word. So I think that's huge for me in the professional community who attend church. The other thing too, for those who are ill, if they test positive for COVID or any illness, typically you stay at home, but now you can watch it from home and not miss the service. So thinking about it in that way too, that you can, it's still a way to keep people connected to the church if they can't physically be there.
okay. I think you guys know my next question. My next question is, what are the negatives that you guys are running into? And I guess I might be speaking more to our pastors, but what are some of the negatives? Because if you don't have anything to say, I do.
Well, I look at some of the negatives is that, virtually you lose some of the reverence. Uh, you lose some of that reverence for God. I know I had to talk with our congregation early on to just encourage them to, while you're sitting at your kitchen table, your living room, don't come with your head rag on or come with your pajamas on and stuff like that. We still have to maintain that holy reverence for God. Your sanctuary become wherever you are. And the thing that I'm most concerned about is that people losing that reverence for God. And I know that we say that the church is not in the building, but the building holds a reverence for God, a respect, for the Lord, and that the thing most now that we're at home, we must somehow maintain that reverence that when we are coming into the worship service, whether it be in our kitchen or whether it be in our living room, so we have to maintain that holy reverence for God. And that's the thing that I see, people they come relaxed and, laid back in their rockers and different things like that. But we have to somehow just hold on to that reverence for God, even, in this time, where we're not able to worship together.
Yeah, I'm noticing. Yes, ma'am, Miss Johnson Javois, the associate pastor, is coming out in her on that one. I do miss the the reverence of the altar and the laying on of hands um, and I even see Miss Geraldine saying that yes, and people are just becoming too comfortable. I believe Bishop Harper, I was equating what you just said to a parallel of the five wise and foolish virgins. In the point where the five foolish being caught without oil in their lamps, and I know I personally just sometimes in my private thoughts just ask the Lord, stop by and see about your people that are at home because I don't want. So I know I had an episode. Someone dialed in for one of our midweek services. Thank the Lord. And well, let us just say maybe her workday had just ended, and some kind of way she bumped into the camera, and I'm gonna let y'all fill in the blanks from there. But it got Sister Katron very upset. But the point, the point on that is that yeah, there that the temple, although yes, the church it's inside of us, but the temple does have a way of reminding you that you are on holy ground, that you are in the presence of the Lord's people. Hey, listen, I see the clock is ticking, and I wanted to get into one question that Bishop Parham, I'm going to lend this one for you. Um, the question is, can ordinances of the church, excuse me, let me word that a different way. Can ordinance practices within the church be curbed toward our suggested health protocols? Again, can ordinances that we practice in the church be curbed toward our health protocols? And I will give, I guess, examples of communion,
Right.
Water baptism, foot washing. Is there a way that we can, for whatever the length of time that we have to stay here, that our practice of these ordinances can make themselves conducive to the time that we're in?
Yeah. Well, I know myself personally with communion. I mean, we've been using disposable communion for quite a while. And I'm talking about way before the pandemic. It was just more convenient and time efficient. So I think that is definitely one way with, the disposable, Feet washing probably is a little different. Um, I think that for a season, we might have to delay some of our ordinances, depending on what they are, because the foot washing is a lot more intimate and you're in each other's faces and things of that nature. We might need to just put a delay on that. Again, I think communion we can still do, but with the foot washing, that puts us right in each other's faces, and of course we're trying to alleviate that experience. I think we just need to be honest with where we are and be honest with our people. And if we explain it, I think that they can kind of embrace and understand and appreciate us trying to keep them safe. As far as giving is concerned, we're probably doing that mostly online anyway. With my church before the pandemic, we were giving as we entered. So I didn't have an offering appeal. I spent probably a couple of years just really teaching and training on giving as a relationship and a covenant, more so than being faulted into it or manipulated into it. So for the longest time, we give as we enter, and then that's kind of where we keep it. So doing it online was a very easy transition for my church. So I just think it's all about how you're going to have to modify what you do. You're also going to have to talk to your people, like Bishop was saying, when it came to our worship experience, don't come with your pajamas on, just change. You have to be honest with people and tell them this is where we're going to be. And since this is where we're going to be, let's make the adjustment, because we all have to adjust for this season. We've never been here before. We don't have a roadmap. The last time anything close to this was in 1912 with the Spanish flu. Nobody from that time is here, so we don't know. We have to work from where we are and just be sensitive, try to stay informed, and then really try to follow the leading of the Spirit to navigate us through this moment. I hope I answered it.
I think you did. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Now, I'm going to ask, for the sake of time, I see we're running out, but I want to ask a question to the entire panel, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Some suggest that the virtual worship experience is less stress and work for those that serve in the temple. Do you agree with that? And what are your thoughts on it? Should I ask it again? So, some people suggest that the virtual experience is, quote, less stress and work, end quote, on those who serve inside of the temple. What are your thoughts on that? And I'm actually, believe it or not, I would like to start with Brother Levi on that one.
Well, for those who don't know, I'm the minister of music as well at my church. and I'm over the media. So, and my father's the pastor of the church. So I don't know who said it's less stressful.
I know it's the truth. I know
That's not
true.
my testimony. I'm almost looking forward to the day to going back into church where I have to run down there it seemed like it would be less stress to have to run to the church and be there all hours of the day and night, because man, I don't know who answered that. I don't know who answered that question. It's more stressful on a lot of us, you know, me included. But yeah, that's
And then
because a lot of our virtual worship for us, since we're not singing, since we've been streaming so long, all of our singing portions of our services are from archive services from the past years. So our worship leader, she goes through and she combs through, even though she's not singing live every week, she has to go comb through every week. And depending on what our pastor's been preaching, the series, whatever, and she has to go find relevant music, something that relates to his message, send it to us so we can download, so we can chop it up, we can edit it, and then our pastor preaches live. So we have to we have a whole control station where we go live to him, and man, less stressful.
Then Pastor, you know,
I'm done.
it's a learning experience for us, you know, because I had to admit it, you never would have told me before last year that we would be able to do a service in an hour and 15 minutes. That, you know, I was going to preach that long, you know, but you know, now we're doing a service in 10:30 till 11:30, and we're out. And I know it's effective because the people are coming back, you know, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. But when you come to the point that people are not going to sit there and look at their little phone for no 2 hours, you know, they're not going to sit there and watch their computer and you hold their attention for that long. So we have to learn how to get a service in, you know, where it still be beneficial to them, as well as preach a full message where the people will hold on to it. It was a learning experience, you know, for me, you know, and how to be able to just make sure that we hold the people. And I know that's working because our Sundays are increasing. We haven't dropped any. We gained, but we haven't dropped. So, you know, that's another thing I just worry about when we do get back in the building. You know, people, they still gonna want that hour. You know. So.
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, anybody else's thoughts on this though? Do you see this as and let me tell you the origin, I guess. The origin of the question is I had reached out to another preacher who had an obligation this afternoon. He was going to participate, and I had conversation with him about this subject matter. And let me tell you, pretty much, if I were to summarize his words, he's saying, "Hey, man, ain't nobody expecting me to go to the hospital no more. Not right now. Not only that, but again, the abbreviated services and the environment that most of us in this forum are used to." He said, "Man, I ain't got to preach for however long I preach and then go and lay hands on everybody. I can't." Here's what I mean. These are the words that he was saying. So and I think with the testimony of a lot of people, they're saying that because so many of us are, these are my words, are captive audiences at home, that could be some of the reason why a lot of the financial support has steadied, or maybe in some cases has increased. So that caused him to say, "Hey, man, I ain't working as hard as I used to work." So that's where I was asking that from, and I was just wondering if anybody else again had any you had any thoughts on that, because I kind of got worried. I'm like, dude, really, you really want to say that? But when you process what he was saying, you know, anybody else, I'm not trying to twist anybody's arm, but
Yeah, I'm not shepherding. I'm not shepherding, but I am supporting my pastor, who's the founding pastor in his upper 80s. I got to tell you the opportunities that it's allowed us to do. Number one, I learned that we overly relied on the same handful of people to do everything. Now we can share tasks and opportunities with so many. So different people are now picking up the ability to do a prayer line daily that the same 5 people don't have to do. There are some young people being released from prison that have nothing better to do except get on Zoom, and guess what? We can feed those young folks because they can't go anywhere, and they never would have done that before. We've seen an audience that we've never been able to reach, because to your point, as we used to convene to say, well, how do we get young adults, and how do we get the backslider? Through our family and DNA, we're seeing young adults and backsliders coming. We figured out even a better tool. It might be blasphemy to say, but Givelify is decent, but faith teams for us works even better. So just being able to like prove out concepts of different products that help us to do a lot more has been great. Our community relationships improved because now that we're not on site all the time, I depend on my elected to tell me what's going on. We had illegal dumping happening that now she's picking up the phone to tell me, and our relationship is better. We're a distribution site for masks, and that's built relationship from an evangelism standpoint we did not have in place before pandemic. So I'm not advocating that this is the way it is, but I'm telling you, God is making some lemonade out of it.
That's very well. I thought someone else was about to chime in before.
I was about to ask a question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I want to make a real quick statement also is that the information in this session is amazing. I mean, I'm really getting it's outstanding. Someone put in the chat, and I don't know if this was prior to you asking or after, we needed to address communal baptism in the same water anyway for a public health standpoint, because these health professionals are bringing out aspects that I never thought about. You know, I mean, we never think about that. We have some new people in our church that ask me about being baptized. So I know at this point, that's just totally, because that's something that I haven't heard anything on. I haven't heard anything talk about baptism or, you know, any restrictions on that. But obviously that's something that should be discussed or something that should be looked at. And so that was something I was wondering if one of the healthcare professionals we're going to address that. I know we're running out of time, but I thought that.
Well, that's okay, because that was actually going to be my last question. So you pivoted right back into it. I will leave that to you, Dr. Turner or Sister Johnson-Dubois, directly as it becomes, you know. Now, granted, none of our panelists use the practice of baptizing every Sunday, unless something has changed and I don't know about it. But beyond that, let me leave that to you, Sister Johnson-Dubois. What about water baptism? Should that, and I'm just asking you just direct, should we put this in that same category that Bishop Parham was suggesting, that that should be pivoted away from for now?
Yes, sir. We needed to do that anyway. I'll take the pre-pandemic, and I can see Dr. Turner leaning in. So even pre-pandemic, if you think about this, some churches at some point would have human beings line up to get in the same water. And even if it was a swimming pool, but it wasn't, it was the same condensed water. We all know from the back end what that water looked like at some point. So even pre-pandemic, we needed to talk about the ability with which we baptize anyway. So now imagine we're going into this season with contact being connected. Dr. Turner, take it from there.
I think one thing when we think about the water supply and sources, something that we don't really talk too much about is Legionnaires, which is a bacteria that if your pipes, you haven't been using your water systems for some time, bacteria can accumulate. So then when you return to church and you start using water faucets and flushing a toilet and running water for your pools, that bacteria can actually be in there. So that's another public health measure that we haven't been talking about with churches reopening. And I agree with Bethany, just, you know, I've been hearing a lot of churches in various different denominations have been putting that off. And I think, with the vaccine, I don't know, I feel like it's a touchy subject for some people, but I would say, for churches who really want to do, it's not an every Sunday thing. There are some that are trying to make some modifications where only one person, wearing the face shield with the mask. So people have been trying to modify that, but I agree with Bethany that right now the risk and the exposure, because it is close to close contact, and it's very difficult if someone have on a mask and they're going under the water and coming back up, the mask is going to be useless at that point. And so the exposure is going to be so great. And the thing that I often see too, a lot of people who are doing the baptism are often older adults who may or may not have underlying medical conditions. So for me, I think that poses a threat, but I'm always a little hesitant to talk about that because I know some people get like, no, this is, I get it. But from a public health standpoint, I would say that we probably need to wait, or at least until the point where, the church community, the one who's doing that baptism, can get the vaccine. And then maybe that can be a new entry point of talking, okay, a designated person who would do the baptisms, still cleaning out the water, the pool after each baptism, doing measures like that, only one family. So if there's 3 or 4 people, and probably spacing it out so that there's not multiple people waiting in line, or maybe having 2 or 3 different baptism services where you can fully clean out the pool. But definitely don't forget about just Legionnaire's disease in general. When you reopen, please run those faucets. You want to make sure that bacteria is not, setting up in those pipes. And unfortunately, if your church been closed for 2, 3, 4 months, probably has been.
I appreciate that, ladies.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to fulfill my piece of this and let you all go in the next 4 minutes. So I appreciate you all, again, the submissions that you've made to this conversation. I can tell you the 2.0 conversation, let me tell you what it would be. As you were talking about various ordinances that we perform in the church, there is a level of conversation at some point that needs to be held with those that believe that the very conversation that we're having represents an absence of faith, represents an absence of the relationship of what we've been preaching about. Now, we ain't got time to go into that one today, but I was just letting you know, giving you some of the answers to the test of what would be on the 2.0 discussion. But also, and there was an attorney that I was efforting to ask them to join us. I believe I can share this and I'll let you go. We should prepare for something. And that which we should prepare for, I'm going to let the cat out the bag. This was from a conversation I had with Bishop Parham a couple weeks ago. We should prepare for when the vaccine is aptly spread and made available. The conversation about HIPAA law and really about that separation of church and state, I believe is going to come up because there was one preacher that had said, well, okay, as soon as the vaccine is spread and we get the go ahead that we can, open on back up. I intend to ask people, have you had the vaccine? And then someone responded saying, well, I don't know, that might be a HIPAA law violation. And then let me tell you what this preacher said to me. He said, well, I manage, as being a pastor of a church, I manage a public space. And I have people that are attending this public space coming from all walks of life. Just like when your child was getting registered for school and they asked of you, had that child been immunized? Now, you can say yes or no all you want to, but if the answer is no, your child wasn't getting in that school. So there is a conversation to be had. Now, I'm only just spinning something forward for you all to process that, along with what a lot of people think, is an invasion of privacy. You can rest assured, before you get on a plane very soon from now, they're going to want to know if you've had this vaccine. And if you haven't, there's a question whether or not if we will be able to freely travel. as we have in time past. So I'm saying to the point where what we have received from you all is excellent dialogue, but I would encourage everybody, keep the dialogue going. Press your public officials. I think we all would agree that there has been that absence of leadership, of direction, of how we should do this, how we should prepare to do that, and as a result, from a government standpoint, and how that has played itself out is it has a lot of us kind of reaching and trying to fending for ourselves. But I appreciate the experts and you all, each of you all. I'm standing in the realm of experts and sharing reasonable approaches for how we all should approach the reopening of our churches. I appreciate your time. I really do. It's the 27th of December as we are recording this, so I won't say Merry Christmas, but I will say God's greatest for you toward a happy and prosperous new year. If he delay is coming, I pray and trust that you all win, and then we get to hear about it. All right. Thank the Lord for everybody. God's grace be upon you for your time. And again, we're going to be rebroadcasting this. I think it's supposed to be the 30th of December. We'll be restreaming this. So if this shows up on your timeline, you can go ahead and share it so people can hear your perspective, and we can hopefully work to effort to get everyone on the same page. God's grace for you all. I love you. Thank you so much. All right. Goodbye.
God bless.
Blessings.